Hi everyone, my name is Nora Hoffman and I'll be talking to you about perspective on engagement and learning guide behaviours. A bit about myself first. So I'm currently fourth and final year of integrated masters in biomedical engineering. And I've been working on this project together with Amina, another student, and our supervisors, Jill and Usman, as part of the Learn and Extend program. So first, what are learner engagement analytics? So I took this definition of the Society of Learning and Analytics Research. So essentially, they define it as the measurement, collection, analysis, and reporting of data about learners and their context for purposes of understanding and the environment in which it occurs. Obviously, that's a bit of a mouthful. Bit of a long statement. So essentially, learner engagement analytics boils down to being different methods and tools for tracking engagement of students in education, try and support them and kind of give them the best education possible and just keep track of what everyone's doing. So why is this important? So obviously, it's trying to track engagement, and it helps students access support they need. So this might be of any academic matter or maybe some personal, as far essentially just there to help students have the best experience possible. And it also helps them see what areas they could be engaging with more, if they're like any progress that they're making, and just having that rounded up experience. Yes, so to provide a bit of context about this project, essentially at the start of the academic year, there was a new learner engagement analytics policy introduced in Queen Mary, and this policy focused on supporting students in their learning and tracking their engagement, basically outlining certain measures that can be done to track engagement and stop prevent students from disengaging and kind of intervening if they need that extra bit of support. With that, there was also the process to start facilitating a student-facing dashboard, so giving the students the opportunity to track the engagement themselves, which they currently can't do, and kind of help them see themselves, what they're doing, how much they're engaging. And as such, it was a good point to start getting students' opinions about learner engagement, what they think engagement is, if there's any like motivating factors, barriers, and just in general, kind of get their input. As such, the Learner Intern program started in November. Me and my student counterpart, Amina, recruited to work on this project with Joe and Usman. And essentially, our role was to provide a student perspective and bridge that gap between us as students and the staff or faculty, and just making it a bit easier and more accessible to everyone. So we then started working on the project, we did literature review, developed our background knowledge, worked on finalizing the focus group protocols. There were similar groups that were run before, so we were just optimizing those, trying to see what could be done better. And then last month, we ran the first set of focus groups. Which brings us to now. So we've analyzed the first set of data, which I'll talk about just after this. And essentially, with those in mind, we're going to run 2 more focus groups in April around gamification. So essentially, like I mentioned, the DME is in the process of developing a student-facing dashboard for students to see their own engagement and implementing those learner engagement analytics tools and implementing those to track engagement for their students to see their own output. So we're going to work on that, and then after all of that, we're going to analyze the data, compile all our findings, and present those to the university at the Festival of Education. Kind of know what the project is, the timeline is, what's happened so far. We're going to talk about what we are actually looking at and what we've done so far. So we're just researching the students' perspective on engagement. So in our first set of focus groups, we're looking at what students think engagement means, what motivating factors there are, what barriers to engagement they think are not that great, and then also the perceived engagement outcomes of students. So we ran 2 focus groups, one online and one in person, with a total of 10 participants. we did notice that the in-person focus group was a bit more active in the research than expected. That very particular. Amina, so from students for students essentially, so there wasn't that kind of dynamic of having lecturers or professors asking a question and students kind of having that bit of fear holding back a bit. So it was student run, both focus groups ran around 90 minutes, followed the same protocol. So the first topic that we talked about was we wanted to know the students' definition of engagement, so what they thought was engagement. And everyone was very clear on the fact engagement isn't just about participation, it's about more than that. So it's not just showing up and going to the lecture, it's about showing that extra bit of initiative, going that extra step. Because if you're showing up to a lecture, you could be doing any number of things other than actually listening and participating with the content. They also said that being able to ask questions and good communication between students and staff was crucial to just make sure that they're engaging with you, you're engaging with them, and just having that open line communication. We then followed that question by asking, what do you think is an engaged student? So how do they act? What are their behaviours? And once again, that's tied in very nicely with the student's definition of engagement. So they said an engaged student isn't just someone who shows up, but someone that actively participates, someone that asks questions, stays on top of the work, shows initiative, and just kind of goes that extra step. So here are some quotes from the focus groups. If you just want to take a minute to read those. Brady, I'm going to move to the next slide. After we've kind of established that baseline of, okay, this is what student thinks engagement means, we then ask them, what are the things that motivate you? What are the things that make you want to actively engage, make you want to do that just a little bit more work? And they said one of the really important things was real life applications and relevance of the taught materials. So students felt that if what they were learning, they could see clearly, oh, great, this is something I can use in my future career. This is something that actually has an application. They were more likely to engage and felt more motivated rather than just having some theoretical framework, whether when then questioning, why am I learning this? Why do I actually need to know this? They also said that being given a choice to some extent, just that little bit of extra freedom was really motivating and made them want to engage. Because obviously, if you're given the choice to some extent, obviously, like choosing your own modules or having that bit of creative freedom when you're doing a design project, made them do things that they were more likely to interact with and just engage more because it was their choice to actively work on that. We then followed that question by the opposite topic. What are things that made students less likely to engage, felt demotivating, and were overall barriers to engagement? So it's kind of the counterpart to what they said, this is engagement. So one of the big ones was poor communication and lack of feedback. So obviously it feels very demotivating if you're reaching out, if you're asking a question, if you're emailing someone and you then never hear back, which then in the future, you're not gonna bother emailing again and asking again because you feel like that lack of response, you're just not gonna benefit from that anyways. They also said that if there's too many students in a singular lecture, so if it's a really big lecture theatre, there's 300 students, they didn't feel like they were getting the most out of the lecture because they were scared to ask questions if they were unsure about something. There was that fear of judgment of having to speak up in front of 300 people and say, hey, I'm sorry, can you go back? I didn't quite catch that, I could clarify that. There's also a certain time component with that, because obviously if there's 300 students but only one lecturer, they're not going to be able to answer all questions. We provide kind of like a one-on-one quick discussion at the end, which ties into the next topic, which is also of a timely manner, which one of the biggest barriers is actually poor timetabling. So it has less to do with communication and connection between students and staff, but more around just the structure of it. So for example, if a student has a really long commute, it takes them 3 hours return trip to even get to university, and they then only have a 1 hour lecture, they didn't feel that the time and money they had to spend to actually travel to the event was worth the output they were going to get. Or if the lectures are really early in the morning and really late, or there's really, really big gaps in between, just that kind of schedule that just wasn't very accommodating, made students less motivated to actually turn up. Again, I have some quotes if you want to take a minute to breathe. So the last thing we kind of asked our students in the focus groups was, what are the perceived outcomes of an engaged student? So we covered topics like, what do you think an engaged student is how they're gonna perform academically, how's their confidence gonna be, how's their career plans, their chances and employability, and just overall success. And students said an engaged student is obviously gonna have a better academic performance than someone who's non-engaged. I mean, it is a logical argument. If you're showing up, if you're participating, if you're actively engaging with the content, if you're learning, you're going to have better grades, you're going to do better in exams and coursework. So you're going to have a better academic performance overall. In regards to confidence, this kind of ties back again with just actively participating, because if you understand a topic really well, if you know what you're talking about, you're going to be more comfortable asking question, answering question, and that's going to give you that little bit of extra confidence, and just have that bit more confidence because you know what you're talking about, you can talk about it, and you're not feeling unsure because you're like, maybe I didn't understand this properly. As such, they said an engaged student is indirectly going to have better chances of employment, because if you're going through an application process, the hiring manager is more likely than a 2-1. And students also felt that if you're actively engaging in your studies, you're also more likely to engage outside of your studies. So you're going to be actively looking for work experience or different opportunities and just going through those application processes more often. So when it does come to then graduating and finding a job, you just more practice. You have that CV build out rather than someone who has just gone to uni and they do have their degree and they maybe have a first as well, but they just don't have those outside experiences that someone who might engage in their studies and outside might. So overall, the students said, yes, if you are an engaged student, you are going to have higher success in your studies and in work life. So for the last time, I have some thoughts again, if you want to. Everyone's ready? I'm going to go to the next slide. So what does this actually mean? So obviously, as we just saw, engagement isn't just straightforward. It's not just a simple construct. There's multiple layers, multiple different things that are at play that all connect together. It's about having that two-way dynamic street between the students and the staff, because obviously the student does have to show that initiative, want to engage by themselves, and the student does have to show their own initiative, but then if the lecturer or the university isn't facilitating that active engaged learning either, the student isn't going to always be proactive about it. So it does have to be a two-way street of the lecturer making sure they're doing the most to have that active engagement with the students as well. So right at the end of the focus group, we did present the students with the learner engagement policy I previously mentioned, and we had them read through basically the different learner analytics tools that are being used to track the engagement, the definitions and there were some small differences. So they said one of the tools that is being used to track students is participation in class. Well, not participation per se, it's showing up to class. So obviously students said, if you're in the lecture, that's great. But once again, you could be doing any number of things. So tracking engagement through simply tracking, is this person attending the lecture or not, isn't actually a good measure. The students did feel that, for example, formative assessments would be a better way of tracking engagement, because those don't count towards your grade. They're just that extra little bit of step for yourself to check, am I understanding this properly? And it just shows that little bit of initiative of your intrinsic will to engage actively with this content. And as the policy was designed to support students, we feel that the policy needs to be slightly adjusted to better reflect what students think are the best analytical tools to track engagement and then have those engagement outputs. But most importantly, with this program, the students had the opportunity to give us their own voice and tell us this is what's happening, this is how we feel about engagement, and just gave that, once again, it was that two-way dynamic street of the university asking, this is what do you think, and then they coming back and giving some more. So as the next steps, as I mentioned previously, we're going to run 2 more focus groups around gamification. So implementing those learner analytical tools to track progress and engagement for students to see their own engagement and have that interactive platform and kind of just get suggestions of this is what students would like to see, this is how they would interact with those platforms, collecting points or maybe something else that would make them want to engage more. We're also then going to give recommendations to the university or just staff in general of the different strategies or tools they could be using to make their content more engaging or just remove certain barriers. So maybe for the university to look at the timetable and go, hey, maybe it's not that great that we have students come in for 1 hour every single day. Maybe we stagger a couple lectures and then they come in 3 days instead of all 5 for just a bit. So to bring all of that back together, the students had very interesting views, and obviously I'm a student as well. So when I had them talk, I was like, yes, I agree, this is the same experience I had myself. These were things where I felt like, you know, really want to have a 46 lecture on a Friday afternoon, not particularly, if you want to come in for 9 AM on a Monday, also not that great. So it was a really good representation of the student body and what they think was engagement, what was motivating, what was disengaging. And just being student partners on this project was a really great experience and it's still ongoing. And it's taught me and my student counterpart many, many things, because we kind of got to run our first focus group. So we learned how to like facilitate that discussion, ask follow-up questions, make sure that the discussion flows nicely, analyze quantitative data, and just overall, it was great because we as students could voice our own opinions and then talk to our supervisors and kind of have that gap. And it's just really nice way, and hopefully we get to shape the experience for the future students and provide an overall better experience for the students to come. Thank you so much.